Who the Wild Things Are with Ryan McGuire.
You gotta listen to your body.
Oh my God, maybe, I could get out there, I could do this.
Let's take a ride, find your wild side, real stories, see with your own eyes.
It's so beautiful.
I'm gonna have the best time out here.
Yeah, I was in tears. I was like, that's the best, man.
Back, everybody, to episode 23 of Who the Wild Things Are. This is the greatest, in my humble opinion, and maybe the only live podcast that brings you stories from around the world of folks that are doing wild stuff, strategies, systems they've used, the stories they tell that make their lives exciting and worth sharing. So, if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, just a reminder, you can always leave us that 5-star review that helps us grow our small podcast into a bigger podcast, helps us expand this community. And if there's somebody you guys want to see on the show, as always, just go ahead and DM me. Let's talk about it. Let's try and make that happen. I try to open up this platform for all of us to, get questions answered from people that we admire or people that we want to know more about. So feel free to DM me if there's somebody like, man, I'd really like to see that guy on the show. With that said, I'm heading out to High Rocks World Championships this weekend. It's in Vegas, but I really wanted to make sure that before that happened, before we went on this cool adventure, that we got this episode in. I think my guest today, Max, has a really cool story. He's a very multifaceted person. He is a professional triathlete. He also is the founder and owner of a company called Fenn Coffee. And he's also a really avid hunter. So he's got a lot of different things going on in his life, and I'm really excited to share that. With that said, let's get Max in here. What's going on, man?
How you doing?
Good. I feel like this is a lot more clear than last time we tried this.
I know. I was watching and I was like, this is a good start. The last time that was a little rough. But,
No, that's okay, dude. I think my phone literally, like I was saying, I think it tried to unalive itself. It just kept closing out anytime I tried to talk to you. The people want to hear it, but Instagram didn't want to let it happen. So
yeah, I know. Timing is everything.
Well, I appreciate you joining me today. I think, I started following you a while back, and it's been really cool to see your journey. And one thing that always sticks out to me is like how much you have going on. Like you have so many different things going on in your life, and you do a really good job at like managing it and making it look like it's all pretty flowy and pretty synchronized. But I know you've probably developed kind of strategies for yourself to make it look that way. Is there anything like when you wake up on a day-to-day basis, when you think about maximizing your time, like what strategies kind of pop into your head?
Well, I don't know if it's so much a strategy as it is I'm just very driven and focused on what it is that I'm trying to build and trying to accomplish. So I write down my goals, and I'm very, very just driven and focused on how I'm going to accomplish those goals. So I think just naturally and intuitively, I just wake up with like, all right, what steps am I going to take to accomplish those goals? But obviously running a coffee company, the most important goal that I have is fulfilling orders or trying to generate sales. So I think most things are centered around how can I generate more sales and crank out the orders that I need to get cranked out.
Right on.
As well as working out too. So, I always got to prioritize getting my workouts in.
How does that kind of work out together? Because I know like caffeine definitely helps me with training, and I'm sure it does the same for you. How did that whole thing play out? Was it like you realized caffeine and coffee were a big part of your health life, and then you decided to kind of pursue that venture?
Yeah, so it's a little bit interesting. I always kind of knew there was a caffeine benefit from playing at high school sports, right? I was born in '87, so we're talking in the early 2000s. That's when like the Red Bulls and all that stuff came out, and we all started with that stuff, and then eventually I was just like, that stuff doesn't sit well with me. I don't like chemicals and gunk. And I started working at a cafe, and then that's when I realized, taking a shot of espresso and then going for a bike ride, like man, I was so wired. But then fast forward to now, I have a buddy that has a genetics company called AxGen Sports, And from a genetic standpoint, he actually told me that I actually have a 10% gain over my competitors when I take caffeine before I compete from a genetic standpoint.
Whoa.
So I was like, dude, you literally proved my business plan for me starting a coffee company, literally proved my business plan.
Holy shit, that is wild. So they studied your genome and then kind of re-engineered it based on like other people that have a similar, some kind of mutation in their genome, and those people, whoever has that mutation, they're more affected, they gain more benefit
Over their
from.
competitors from taking caffeine before like a time trial event. And this company, like I believe he told me they also test all the special ops guys because so essentially what this company is able to do, it's able to tell you what injuries are you predisposed to, right? Like are you someone that's has the genetics to get shoulder injuries or shin splints? Like they're literally able to test for that and figure that stuff out for you.
Wow, that's incredible. What's this company called?
Gen Sports. But if you go once my social, if you go to my page and just scroll down, just look for the page where I have a swab in my mouth, right? And pandemic time, I think 2020 is there's a video of me, and just go to Gen Sports, and then you just get a test online and get all that information. I also found out for me, which was also very interesting. I also found out that I was lactose tolerant. So most black people are lactose intolerant. But he was able to show like, no, dude, your family, you have a European gene that actually allows you to process lactose. And so they're able to test for that stuff as well.
Interesting. And I feel like I saw something on your page about like your ancestors, maybe grandparent, great grandparent era. They were farmers, right? Is that right? Or the hunters, farmers?
Sharecroppers, right? So I'm actually so Indigenous American, right? My mom did her 23andMe, but also our genealogy. So our genealogy takes us way back to the 1800s, 1700s in the Americas. 23andMe takes us way back farther than that, with showing us everything that's going on. But immediately, my great grandfather was a sharecropper in Alabama. But what's really interesting about his story is he fought in World War I, came back and was farming. So I'm still talking to my mom to talk to the rest of the people in our family to kind of understand like what is it that he went off to World War I and then came back to this land and then worked this land. And then the other part of the interesting story of it is then my grandfather went to Tuskegee and studied under George Washington Carver. George Washington Carver is the one that has all these patents. He's known for like peanuts and like I think it was like 300 different patents. It was George Washington Carver that convinced my grandfather not to go into seminary or not to become a farmer, but then to go into seminary. And then my grandfather moved up north and started his own church. But my grandfather, his hunting connection is my grandfather ran dogs.
Right. Yeah. And that's funny. We actually had a podcast last week with David Ian Howe, and we talked a lot about the development of early human and dogs and then kind of that modern hunting era, which was a huge part of American culture. And it sounds like your culture as well. So it's a cool story. And now it's been cool to see, you really embrace that wholeheartedly. You've got your own dog who's a lab, like full out hunting dog, and you're kind of living that yourself.
I know. And I mean, also, I think you noticed my dog ran off, which was the worst feeling in the world was when like that's how high his prey drive was. That like I was just caught slipping and something moved and my dog just took off after it. I was like, oh, it's the worst. But knowing a lab and knowing how smart he is, thankfully he came back on his own 6 days later.
Yeah, my friend just said Willow's a hunting dog. She'll run miles off, especially if it's big game. She'll go miles. And there's really, with her, and I'm sure you can relate to this, she can get back to me so much easier than I can get to her. If we're talking about the span of one day, like I could, over like a full day or 2 days, I could surface a whole area, but she's able to get back to me from miles away so much faster. It's incredible. So sometimes I just have to say, well, I know she'll be back.
Do you have an e-collar?
E-collar?
Yeah, do you use an e-collar?
I don't even use a collar.
Really?
Well, not yeah. Most of the time, she just has her coat. I call it her bush collar. I use the back of her neck, like if she has a bunch of extra skin, but I don't. She doesn't usually wear a collar.
Well, so with my dog, if my dog wasn't on, like if wasn't under my control, like he'd kill anything he can get. Is like like if it was another dog, like maybe even a horse, like my dog would go after it. But so I have an e-collar that has a 1.2 mile range on it. So
Wow.
that that allows like gives me the confidence of knowing that like all right, if my dog was to again get away from me in the backcountry, I can get it back with my e-collar.
So, it comes to your phone then, and it's like, yo,
Oh
your
no,
dog's like,
it's a handheld, right? It's a handheld, and essentially you can shock, vibrate, or do like a bell tone.
oh, okay. And then, so you're like sending stimuli to the dog, and the dog knows to come back.
Yep, he knows to come back, or the stimulus would just keep going until he comes back, or until he's in eyesight.
Understood. Yeah,
But
the
what's
crazy
but the
thing.
but what's really cool is if you train him properly, you can just use the bell tone and like use it once, and he just like he doesn't even want to get shocked. He's just like as soon as you hit that bell tone, comes running back.
Right. Yeah, it's crazy how quick they are to understand things like that. I've even had one with Willow, like, so she has recall, which is just like come or on me if I'm moving. But then I've noticed another powerful recall tool is if I say ready, which is
Yeah, I
uh
do that too.
I didn't even mean to do this, but I always say ready before I throw something and fetch.
Yeah,
So when I say ready, even if I'm talking to a friend, I'm like, hey, are you ready? Willow will come sprinting like into
yeah,
the scene, like, what are you gonna throw?
yeah. So Tahoe's sustain ready is Tahoe's like release command, like ready, like you can go ahead and eat, like you can go ahead and hunt, right? He is ready, break, and free.
Gotcha. Willow's I use okay. So like if she's next
Yeah,
to
I
me,
use okay
then
too. Yeah.
I'm just like, and I do that with her food. Like I'll leave like an elk leg out and just like, she'll be totally salivating over it. And then I say,
Yeah.
okay. And she knows she can go tear it up.
Someone I see someone ask, has any dogs encountered any wildlife? Yeah, my dog actually just recently caught a ground squirrel and just knew to retrieve it. Like it was the craziest experience. Like my dog is so smart that like he ran up this embankment, got this squirrel. I was like, oh crap! And I was just like, all right, bring it here. And he was just so proud to bring it towards me. But my lab is a full-on working dog with a very, very strong scent. So I actually use him for tracking. So my dog can track bears, mountain lions, deer, and come deer season, I just put him on a scent and follow him, and we see what happens.
Right. Yeah. My dog, she's not as sophisticated. I mean, I haven't really worked her in terms of like tracking specific scents, but her prey drive is very high. So she's gotten a couple squirrels and torn them up, which is always unfortunate, but they're overpopulated where I live anyways. Um, a birds scare me more because they're more likely to carry disease. So I
Mm.
tried to train that out of her. And then she got her butt whooped by a mule deer, which was pretty
Bummer.
scary. I was up in the mountains at a relative's house, and she was outside, and everything was fine. There's always tons of elk and deer on the property. They just are very docile. And yeah, she got whooped. And the mule deer, it stomped her and then peed on her. So she smelled
What?
terrible for a long
Oh
time. Yeah,
goodness.
it was wild.
A good so actually I asked my mom what was the old way of how they taught our dogs how to hunt. And then one game that I have with my dog is when I like if I made like bison or just like a very like some chicken like a very high value treat that I recently just cooked. What I'll do is I'll put them in the kitchen, have them sit, right? Go hide the food like in another room, and I then like hype him up and be like, go find it, right? And then what that does is it allows him to work his nose and understand like, oh, if I use my nose, I'll find the treat, and he loves that game. So that's a very good way to just like train them to start using their nose.
That's interesting. Yeah, I would love to do that. One question I would have about that, and maybe you have more of an answer, is like, how do you have them, especially a dog that, so like obviously hunting dogs that grew up training certain scents, like how do you do that later in life? How do you teach your dog to understand the difference between a bear scent and a mountain lion scent and a deer scent?
Honestly, for me, I just been using my intuition of just like I just talk to my dog. Like once I know it's a bear scent, I'm like I just hype him up. I'm like, oh, very good, that's a bear. The other thing is you can collect the animal scat, right? So if you come across mountain lion scat, if you come across bear scat, same thing. Put it in a box, right? And then once they go up and smell it in the box, be like, oh, good boy, that's a bear. You found the bear, right? And then same
Right.
thing. Do the same thing with deer. Do this whatever scat it is, like train it in that way, and then once they get on the scent, and like I mean, you see the dogs on deer tracks, be like, good, you're following the deer, and then the dog's gonna know I'm following the deer, right? You just gotta associate that scent with whatever that word is, and then they'll know.
Interesting. Yeah, I've never even thought about like taking the scat home and like, reinforcing that word. That's a really good idea. And speaking of bear hunting, last time we were trying to do this, you had a bear hunting kind of community meeting where you guys were trying to argue for it. I guess for people that aren't in the hunting community, uh, a big, there's been a large amount of pressure on predator hunting, particularly Western states are trying to outlaw bear hunting, black bear hunting. And you actually gave kind of like a little speaking piece, a little piece of your mind to the community to have people understand where you were coming from. I'm curious, kind of what was your approach there? What was your message?
Well, the first thing is I started United Hunters Project it's a nonprofit with the purpose of preserving Black, Brown, and Indigenous hunting heritage. When I started hunting, like I couldn't find necessarily any information on like what is like how did Black Indigenous people hunt? Like how like what is that heritage in the Americas? Because so much of it was oral stories that was passed down, right? So I have to go to my mom and say, Mom, how did my grandfather hunt? What were the stories that he would tell you? What did they hunt, right? To get that information. And then when you find out like they hunted with dogs and this is what they've been doing, and then when I talk to other indigenous people, and this is what I shared for the commission meeting, is that people don't understand Native Americans used to walk into town with wolves, right? And then what happens is you have these anti-hunting organizations then say, oh, we're trying to protect these animals and we're trying to do this. And it's just like, well, what is your connection with these animals? What is the heritage? What are the stories that you have? And it's like, well, we're just trying to save these animals. But then I'm like, but you don't understand. We used to walk into town with wolves. You guys, they then passed laws to stop us from walking into town with wolves, right? Then I'm out here in California. You hunt bears. We used to hunt bears with dogs, and then you're then passing a law to prevent us from hunting bears with dogs. And then their rationale is like, oh well, it's mayhem and it's blah blah blah. And I was like, I have to tell them, I was like, you don't understand. I look at my ancestors and I'm saying, well, why did my ancestors hunt with dogs? Like, what was the purpose behind that? What was the connection? What was the ceremony? There's answers to that. But if you then go create laws to prevent someone like me to be able to follow in those footsteps, I'm then not able to remember who it is that I am, right? I can't figure out what my heritage is because when I'm out in the wilderness, as I'm sure you're aware, your ancestors are able to speak to you and guide you and tell you what is it you need to know and what is it you need to figure out, give you the answers that it is that you're looking for. So anti-hunters come at it like, oh, it's trophy hunting and blah 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 blah, and we're like, it's not about that. We're talking about food first of all. We're trying to live like we're trying to get very good quality meat because we can't guarantee where our food comes from. And two, heritage. This is what you've been doing for thousands of years. You have been going out and searching for your food for thousands of years. And when you walk in those footsteps, that then allows you to remember what it means to be a human. When you
Right.
remember what it means to be a human, you then are, I think you become a good person, right? Because you're out in nature, right? You're respecting the circle of life. Um, but oftentimes, especially now that with this nonprofit, I'm just encountering folks from the other side, from the anti-hunting side, that they aren't respecting the heritage that there is around hunting.
Yeah, for sure. And I admittedly, you know less about my own heritage, and I really respect that you've gone through that process, because I know it can be arduous, and like there's a certain amount of time and effort you have to put in to understand like your own heritage. And for me, it's been more about understanding a couple things. One, really just like the history. So as part of it, like this word trophy hunting, it actually, and I know you've done some Teddy Roosevelt stuff, like studying. I've heard you talk about him before, but like they actually created the idea of trophy hunting to sustain populations. They were like, go after the biggest, oldest males when you're hunting, and that's the highest point value, which is basically the sustainability approach, right? You're not killing the young ones that, even though they taste better, you're leaving the young ones, letting them grow older, and you're leaving the females. So this idea of trophy hunting is actually a sustainability effort. Like, yeah, it was kind of tricked into it, but it's not like it was a ill-intentioned, like they weren't trying to just kill animals for sport just because they called it trophy hunting.
But even so, when you're a hunter, I feel like it just becomes intuition that you're not trying to shoot a young animal, right? You're like, that's the other thing that they don't understand. You're not out there being like, oh yeah, I want to go find a baby cub or a fawn, and that's what I want, or a small little pig. It's like, no, like I want as much meat as possible, as well as, I want to understand, I want to know that like what I'm taking has lived a very good, healthy life, and it's got like all the meat and, it's a healthy animal. So, I was very offended when those people were just bringing up trophy hunting, because I was just like, I don't think anyone on this phone call is a trophy hunter.
Right. So when you think about your dedication to hunting and your kind of like path into this world, how much of a role did your fitness play on you being able to just like hop in and become full in as a bow hunter and airgun hunter?
Yeah, so I think that's the other thing is I enjoy the workout, right? I think the other aspect of hunting is, I'll be honest, I went into it thinking, and this is from what you see on television and all the anti-hunting propaganda. I felt like, yeah, I was gonna go out into the woods, and like, I go run in the woods, I see animals. I thought like that's just what it was going to be. I thought it was going to be like, simple or easy. Like I thought I was just going to be out in the woods for a hot second and run into something. Next thing you know, I find out that it's like extremely grueling. You're covering 6 to 10 miles, right? Me being a professional triathlete, I find very rare moments these days where a workout will break me, in the sense like cause me to like stop, or just really just be like, oh my gosh, this is really kicking my butt. And I find that hunting right now is the only thing that like I wait when I drive home and wake up the next day, I'm like, man, I feel like I just did a half Ironman. Like
Right.
I'm like my body's sore, like I'm like, I'm pretty exhausted. But when you're a bow hunter or you hunt with an air gun, it's all about covering ground, and you have to learn how to carry a 45 pound pack on you, because you're carrying a day's worth of water. Plus, if you run into any, sketchy situation, so that's why your pack's so heavy. And then you're trying to just, stay in the shadows and just move as quietly as possible and cover as much ground as possible. And with how California is, it's either you're coming around the bend or up over a ridge line. You just gotta be ready to like poke your head up, see something, and then just poke up and take a really good, accurate shot. And that's why it's so challenging, because uh, for me, like I enjoy pulling into a parking lot and just like it's like I get very competitive, and like I'm borderline running into the backcountry, because I know a lot of these other people aren't fit. So it's like I'm speed walking in there, and I know a lot of guys, they just park their truck, walk in like 800 feet, walk a road, and then call it a day. But if you want to be successful, anytime I've really bumped into a game, it's been like when I'm an hour in, that's when I'm going to start bumping into something.
Yeah, and the encounter is so much different, right? Like if you do get lucky and you see some wildlife, there's deer and elk in people's neighborhood. But when you're really deep in the bush, like, a day, 2, 3 days from civilization, and you have that moment with a wild beast that has survived a bunch of crazy shit, it's like a really special moment.
Hey man, I'll be honest with you. That's why I've been hunting so much. I haven't more often than not. I think this year with all the rain in California, it's been causing a lot of the animals to move about a little bit more. And little pro tip: if you stick around the creeks, you see a lot of action. And it's just, from for me so far with turkey season, it's just been nonstop bumping in the game. And come bow season, man, there's just nothing better than, just moving through and then just bumping into something.
So do you see your hunting as cross training for like your triathlon life, or is your triathlon life like feeding into your hunting, or is it is it a little bit of both?
I feel like it's a little bit of both, simply because the I'm using the hunting experiences for a competitive edge when I go and compete. And then I'm using that aerobic capacity to allow me to cover as much ground and understand how my body's going to react when I'm in very, very tough situations when I'm out hunting. As
Mm.
well as I think hunting has allowed me to adapt to heat much better
Uh,
than I used to when I competed in endurance events. I think it's just in California, deer season starts in July. So this past year, I remember we camped out. It was like 90 degrees. So that means the ground was probably still like 100. And then we just, we hiked for just the morning and it hit like early hundreds. And I mean, we're talking about you're hiking with long pants and long sleeves because you're still trying to have, a good amount of camo, at least for the morning. And that adaptation, I think, just allows you to level up when you want to. Because what is me riding 56 miles on a bicycle? Like it's a different type of adrenaline, right? But it's like I'm not worried about a bear coming up, sneaking up behind me, or a mountain lion while
right.
I'm not, there's a different type of stress that's placed on you. Whereas, yeah, I could ride 56 miles, but, I'm not worried that a mountain lion is going to get me.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's the thing I was thinking about earlier when you were talking about hiking around up and over hills. It's like, it's one thing to go on a day hike, right? And like you're, BSing with your friends and everyone's just having a good time, kind of kicking back, walking around. It's a whole nother thing if you're intentionally looking, listening, constantly surveying, and also covering all that distance, right? It's like the emotional ups and downs and the focus it takes during hunting. You're definitely more drained than just like your average hike.
I mean, the first bear I ever saw in California, I put a stalk on it. And I remember when I got to where I saw it, I thought to myself, like, wait a minute, what happens if I miss? Like, I hunt with a recurve bow, right? So there's a lot of room for error. You can think you got a good shot, and next thing you know, you hit this thing in the brisket, and it didn't even go in within an inch. It like bounced off. And now you've got this, 500-pound bear looking at you like, are you kidding me? Right? So, there's a lot to it that a lot of folks just aren't aware that I think really just adds to you as just leveling up in terms of just that competitive aspect.
For sure. I want to touch a little bit on the triathlon thing. I'm curious, I've started to get into this like fitness racing world, just not on the same level or dedication that you have, but it's been really cool to see the different ways that people find themselves, walking into this, what I call type 2 fun, which is basically people volunteering themselves to go through a life of a lot of really hard training and early mornings and dedication when you really don't have to. So I'm curious, like, how did you get into this lifestyle, just like to start out as a professional triathlete?
Yeah, I got into triathlons by accident. So I was training to become a professional triathlete, and then when I sprained my MCL on a pickup soccer game, and so when I sprained my knee, I was using triathlon as a way to rehab myself and get like just to prove to myself that I was healthy. When it ended up happening, I was just like, wait a minute, there's no diversity in this sport. Let me see if I can make a name for myself. And I liked it. I think triathlon best days are behind it. I think it's kind of hit a stagnation point. And I got to be honest, I really think DecaFit in the High Rocks is about to be like the next big thing. Like we just had CrossFit, right? Spartan's been hanging on for a good bit. Spartan then went to Spartan Stadium, but the price point for a High Rocks or a DecaFit event where it's been between $100 and $150, and you're just talking about a short drive to your local city, and it's a great event, great people, um, lots of high energy. You're going to push yourself, a lot of variety, right? It's not boring. I think it's a glorified gym class, and I think us millennials, like the competitive dodgeball players in gym class and middle schoolers, right? I think that's what's coming out in us of like we want to be back in that arena, in that gymnasium with our buddies, competing against each other. And I don't necessarily think people are really down to drop like $700 on an Ironman these days
Right.
and beat up their body for 8 hours, 8 to 10 hours.
Yeah, for sure. And I think we've talked about this before. It's like the cool thing about the high rocks and the shorter distance, not even shorter distance, more localized races that kind of take place in one spot. It becomes way more of a spectator sport. Like you can have all of your homies and your buddies just like, just drive 5 minutes to the local convention center and watch you do like a really cool race, and they can see you for the entire hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, rather than like a long distance ultra or triathlon when maybe it's like, yeah, we saw Max go by, we'll see him in 6 hours from now. It's like it's
It's just
completely different.
laps, and you're watching everybody. You're watching fit people. You're watching fit, sexy people running around, and you're watching people that are inspired to reach their fitness goals, watch around or run around. So yeah, man, I totally agree with you. It's very spectator friendly, and it leads you to see like, oh, I could sign up to do this. How much was it? Okay, I'll sign up for this next time.
Right. Yeah, it's a cool sport. Have you done a high rocks yet?
I did DecaFit, which I did pretty well, and I'm getting ready to go do another DecaFit to see if I can qualify for their world.
And the Deca Fit is pretty similar, right? In terms of like,
I think it's shorter though.
okay,
The
so
run is
Deca
shorter.
shorter high rocks kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and the high rocks I mentioned earlier is this weekend, the World Championship. So luckily this year, I didn't even know what high rocks was, like when the beginning of this year started. And then me and my friend just like randomly decided to do one, and I had no idea how cool it was going to be. And so now, fast forward 5 months, I'm going to the championship.
But don't you think it's sustainable? Like it's just like, I could be doing this for the next 5 years.
Yeah, absolutely. The only thing, I know I'm probably alone in this, I don't like that high rocks is inside. I just in general don't like being inside at all. So it's like the fact that, and most of like the training I've had to do for this has been inside versus like Spartan, all my training was just trail running, picking up heavy shit outside. Now I've got to like go inside and pull on a machine, and I'm like, God, I could be outside. And
Well, so check this. I said this to the gym that I work with. I'm sponsored by Mobus Fitness, and I've had that same idea. I think if DecaFit could go to downtown city and do it on a block, like do it in like Times Square, or just find a city area and put it outside, like you said. I think that, and like have the run around the block type of deal. I think that's where it would be very dope, especially if you could do it on the block where there's a bar, like, a very popular city bar, and like it's all happening right there. Because then it's just like, why are you spending so much money to rent, a facility when you can put that thing outside, order some porter potties, and close down just probably like 2 blocks, and you're good.
yeah, and I see this being as like sort of a hybrid between what you would imagine like a Spartan sprint, which is like a short distance obstacle race, with something like high rocks, where like you can be outdoors, but it's still got like that fitness component. And yeah, like you said, it's just cool atmosphere. People are drinking beers, tons of fit people everywhere, like music playing in the background, but you're outdoors having a good time.
Or the track. Why not see if you can put it in like at some college track. See what you
That
can do that way.
Yeah, that would be sick. That'd be a good time. Yeah, I think there's a lot of options, but what I'm thankful for is that people are putting their head to this and making these things available. It's kept me in shape, and I think it's been really fun. Ultimately, the only reason I started running was, I mean, probably similar to your mindset at this point. I need range to get in the backcountry. Like, in order to get deep in the backcountry, I have to be able to run minimum 10, 20 miles a day without a lot of food and water. And I got to have that confidence in myself. And that's really where like my fitness desire happens. And like, once you get into that backcountry mindset, like that's always at the top of your mind.
Definitely, that's where I'm at now too, where it's just like, man, like I think kind of what I was saying earlier with certain hunters around here, we really want it to be where it's like, yeah, you just walk in half a mile and you see an animal and then bam, and the next thing you know. But the fact of the matter is, you probably have to be 5 miles in for something really, or 5 miles in, or climb up like an extremely high ridge line. But it's just what I just come to understand is just it's not going to be easy. You have to put in some serious miles.
For sure. One story I heard, I don't remember where I heard this, but you were on a pod maybe, and you were telling the story about how you first came about I guess it was triathlons. You got in a little scuff with the law, and you ended up finding like this old tape, right?
Yeah,
That was kind of how you
yeah.
got into this whole thing?
Yeah, man, just seeing old triathlons, and then I was like, honestly, I was just like, man, like maybe like this is something that I could do, and like literally, I was working at a coffee shop at the time, like just like I think I'd like stopped going to classes at the time, working, and literally a gentleman came in, and this was right after I sprayed my MCL, and he's like, what are you gonna do now? I was like, I don't know, maybe I'll do these triathlon things, and this guy gave me his bike and I did well in my first triathlon. So it's a weird, I always see it as certain things happen for a reason. We go down certain paths to understand certain things, and sometimes we have certain screw ups so we don't screw up later in life.
Right.
And literally, like, I was one of those people that always said to myself, hey, if I ever got in trouble, then I would just understand that, like, I would need to be in service to other people. So a lot of what I do is like I don't say it out loud, but it's just with this purpose of like I know that I need to be in service to other people, because if I'm not, I just feel like all this would be taken away from me. So it's literally like I'm just, I'm here to serve and help other people how best I can.
That's awesome. And yeah, I've seen you do a lot of stuff in your community, super active on uh different community organizations. You mentioned the United Hunters Project that you're working on, and then you were also thinking about doing some politics, right?
Yeah, I just ran for city council, which went all right. I probably could have prepped for that a little bit more. I think I'm going to stay getting involved with California politics. I think California is my home. I enjoy living in Menlo Park. I actually just met with the police chief not too long ago, and he even asked me, he's like, "Are you going to run again?" I was like, "I don't know. That's not necessarily, a good thing to know that I've lived here and rented so long and we haven't figured that situation out. I'm actually a chair of a climate change team here for my community, doing a lot with, we're trying to address just the affordable housing. And a lot of people don't understand when they say affordable housing, that means for people making anywhere from 100 to 140,000, right? Like that's what they mean by affordable housing in this area. It doesn't mean like, oh, they're gonna put in like, rental units that are at $700. Like that's not what folks mean around here. So it's
Yeah.
still trying to address all those issues of the housing, and there's a lot of fights going on right now between homeowners not wanting there to be more housing built, but like it's just frustrating in the Bay Area. And it's one of those things we just can't all be moving away, right? I love where I live. I live in a great area. I live in a great training area. My company's been doing well here. And it's like I should be able to live here, but I shouldn't have to pay $1 million, or $1 million house shouldn't be going for $6 million. And that's what's happening.
Yeah. So in the future, are we going to be doing this podcast like 2 years from now, and it's going to be Max Fennell for president, or what's the trajectory?
Governor, man. I think so. I think if I can do, I think that fight with the bear band was that first little taste of like, let's let's fight for something here. I think the next thing is I want to see if we can get big bore air gun hunting in California. Because right now you can't hunt with big boars in California. You can only hunt like turkeys, coyotes, and stuff. So I can't hunt deer, bear, or anything with big bore. And I think it's just getting more figuring out ways to get involved with like different communities, right? I think I cross both aisles. I'm able to communicate with people because I have an understanding of agriculture. A lot of the places I go and hunt is, it's farmland.
Mm,
Um, but with living here, and I think a lot of people just aren't happy with what's going on. I think I just posted this. My car was broken into in the backcountry,
mm,
right? In what the person stole $50 worth of stuff. So they broke. It's costing me $300 for $50 worth of stuff. And when I drove out of there, I stopped at the General, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, this person broke into my car that rather than drive to the Dollar General and buy the things that they stole, and that really just tells you what's going on if somebody's thinking of breaking into my car for some chump stuff. And uh, I just think that certain people in politics are just were it's 2022. They're just out of touch. They just don't know. They know how to say certain things. They know how to listen and say certain things, but they
right.
don't know how to come up with solutions and ideas to fix the problems that we're facing.
Interesting. Yeah, it sounds cool. You got my vote, and I mean, I definitely feel like you're well-rounded, like in your different experiences. So you would definitely have kind of some perspective that I think a lot of politicians wouldn't have, especially in terms of like the environment and an appreciation for outdoors and the outdoors culture that is not typically prioritized.
Exactly. And as well as just kind of, then it's just going to come down to with being a business owner of thinking like,
Mm,
how is it that you can come up with jobs, right? Like how, like, and that's a lot of the reason why we're facing a lot of the issues that we are facing right now. It's because we're one of the wealthiest, if not, I think the wealthiest state in terms of, generating income. But, why are there people living underneath underpasses and how are you just not addressing that?
yeah,
So.
for sure. So one thing you mentioned there, I want to jump back in real quick. The air guns. What's the genesis of that, and kind of explain for people that aren't familiar. What's the difference between that and a normal rifle?
Yeah, so a firearm is a firearm, so that uses gunpowder to push its, propellant out of a barrel, right? So there's combustion, and that's what propels the projectile out of the barrel. With an air gun, there's compressed air out of the tank, and that's what's used to push the projectile out of the barrel. How hunting works, it's all about the energy behind the projectile of what is that is the reason why something is killed, right? The energy behind it. So if you're able to take a 50 grain projectile and push it at a certain speed, it's going to produce a certain amount of energy. Based on that energy, that's what's going to be able to take a certain type of gain. Air guns are now at the point where they're producing similar type of energy and power output as firearms. It's just the regulations much different. So you can buy an air gun or online. So if you go to thepelletshop.com, because I'm sponsored by them, you can take a look at the air guns in their selection, and you can do a little bit of research and find out what's going on with air guns. But
Very
what's
cool.
but what's really really cool about air guns is that it really lowers that barrier to entry into hunting, right? So not everybody needs to go get a shotgun. Not everybody needs to go get a rifle, right? You can get a bow, you can get an air gun, you can even get a slingshot. But I think a lot of times, if people are going to be getting into hunting, you're really talking about small game that you're probably going to go after, and just
Hmm.
getting a 22 or a 25 air 22 or 25 25 caliber air rifle. That's just going to allow you to get hunting immediately. And in certain states, you can get larger caliber air rifles that will allow you to hunt bigger game.
Cool. And why do you prefer hunting with an air gun versus a normal firearm, say like a 30-30?
For me, honestly, is the majority of the time I'm really gonna try and hunt with my bow, and then I think with an air gun, it's the same thing. You're still inside archery range, right? So if I hunt with a rifle, like I just see it as like, yeah, you can like I can go perch up on a ridge line and snipe something out 300 yards away, and I completely get why people do that. But I think the best way I can really explain it is when I learned how to play the guitar when I was little, I was never drawn to playing like an electric guitar, right? It was
Mm.
just like, I think I've had two electric guitars in my life. I barely played them, sold them, and just really didn't care. I've always just been an acoustic guy. And for me, it's like I'm gonna be someone that's gonna cover lots of ground. I barely even glass. All right, like I barely like I sit on the hill. I might look for like 10 minutes and be like, all right, F this, like let's just get down in the bush and like, see what you bump into. And anytime I bump in the game, it's gonna be within 70 yards in. Anytime I bump the deer, it's within bow range. And if you have an air rifle, it's the same thing. You
Yeah.
can take the game at 70 yards. And then the other thing is California, right? So it's like I don't live near any ranges or anything like that. It's not like you can just go out unless you go on public land, and they are just much more cheaper to own and operate than having a firearm. I can get so many more pellets with $20 than I can right now with the cost of ammo. Like I have two 45 caliber air rifles, right? So a 45 caliber pellet, like this is a 45 caliber hollow point pellet. So I mean, you can still have power, but for me, like I just care about hunting.
Mm.
And then the other thing is I've been lucky enough that these companies they snatched me up. They sent me these air guns, right? So I think I've only bought like two air guns in my life, and then the rest has been sent to me. And
Right
I
on.
think those what's really cool about the airgun companies, these companies are very smart. Is they're putting like in a lot of industries you have to beg companies. You literally have to be like, I'm so and so, and here's my views, and please send me, a keychain. And then the airgun company, in the airgun world, like these companies are sending airguns to people left and right because as
Mm.
soon as you get one, next thing you know, you're talking like me, being like, why are you getting a firearm? Well, you could just go to the pelletshop.com and buy an air rifle and have it shipped to your house, and then you can go dip off into the woods and go shoot at the ground, and no one's gonna like it's completely legal, right? You can't discharge a firearm, but you can go shoot a pellet gun in your backyard.
Yeah, for sure. And that, I think you got me sold. Maybe I like you. It's funny you said the acoustic guitar thing. Like I'm the same way. Never drawn to electric guitar. I play acoustic guitar probably every day. Never interested in that. I shoot my bow probably every day. I don't. I have a gun. I never, not never. I shoot it much less than I shoot my bow. Um, so I think yeah, there's like a natural disposition that some people have, like leaning one way or the other, and it doesn't necessarily have to make sense to everybody else. It's kind of more like this is what I'm naturally drawn to.
I think it's just, and I think this is what the airgun industry is trying to fight right now, and I think they're doing a really good job of it. Is like I just think it's a culture issue. I think everyone like just the movies and stuff just makes it think like, oh, it's just so glorious to have a firearm. But if you're like someone like me that's like, I just need something to hunt with, or I just need something that when I'm in the backcountry and I encounter a bear or a mountain lion, I can handle it with the firearm that I have or the air gun that I have, right? And that's the benefit of having an air gun is that I can go into the backcountry with a 45 caliber air gun, hunt rabbits, turkeys, coyotes, whatever it is that I'm trying to eat, and I'm good, right? Same thing with a firearm. It's just that if you care about a budget and you care about having something that's pretty cool and being able to buy a silencer and not have to have it register, like you can buy it. Like, have you ever seen an airgun silencer?
I haven't.
Just let me,
Let's get one on here. Let's see what they look like. I honestly, I'm an air guy.
bro. This is an airgun silencer.
It's massive.
Suppressor. I know. I'll show you this. Unscrewing it. Right.
Okay. Wow.
So it's like,
We got somebody.
that.
Do you have any air guns there, or just the
Of course I
silencer?
do, bro. Of course I do. uh,
Let's see what we're working with here.
represent. It's gonna be hard to show because
Dude, that thing's
this is
sick.
I know, dude. This is with Element. I'm giving all the sponsor plugs. Element Optics. Right. This is Air Force Texan. So this is a 45. All right. So that one's cool. But this is what you would like.
Okay.
This is another 45, but this is what you call like a backpack gun, right?
Yeah, because
So,
does that break down into a pistol size? Is that what?
yeah, hold on, let me show you. Let me do this real quick. So, by the way, people are interested, thepelletshop.com. Awesome sponsors. Screw this up.
The cool thing would be for me is like, oh yeah.
So that goes like that.
The cool thing that I keep thinking about is like, if I had that in the back, then I wouldn't have to worry about fire restrictions, because I don't know if you're familiar, but like one of the things is shooting guns even on public land is illegal certain times of the year because there can be small discharges of just really hot metals or little bits of fire, anything that can cause combustion, and that becomes a serious issue when you live in Colorado, California, stuff like that.
And I think you have better hunting regs in Colorado than California because again, I think you're pretty restricted with coyotes on down with hunting in California. But I know in other states it's like you can hunt wild pigs, elk, right, deer.
Mm.
But again, like I mean, this is still just going to allow you to get that trigger time that you want to have. But the same thing, it's like that's no different than having a BB gun.
Right. Yeah. And the big thing is like the ammunition costs, like for people maybe that don't shoot guns often, ammo, especially in the last 10 years, has gotten like crazy expensive. Like people spend, their entire paychecks on that stuff now.
The only other thing I'll point out with these things that's different than a firearm is that you have to remember pump it up with air, right? So what's really cool is I pump all of mine up with a hand pump.
Okay.
And pumping them up with a hand pump is also like another serious workout that I also think is really just kind of added to me in my fitness of just like having like because it's really hard. You're trying to pump an air gun up to like 3,500 for 4,000 psi.
Okay. So that's another part of like the hard work that goes into it. It's like, it's like making your own arrows or like tailoring a bow. You got to put in the work to be able to use the weapon.
Yeah, and there's other people that are making their own pellets, and I think that's just what like. I think that's why so many people like air guns. It's because it's like so much of it you can personalize, so much of it you can put your own effort into it. A lot of people like adjust their own triggers and do all these different modifications because with air guns, right, you're trying to figure out ways to increase the power, increase certain air output. And I think that like people that like to wrench on things and just like to tinker with things, I think are drawn to air guns.
For sure. I definitely am a tinkerer, so I think that's something. I think you got me sold here. I'm gonna need to find me one of Max's 100 sponsors and just hit them up and start.
Bro, I would reach out to the pellet shop first and tell them like, first go online and look at what your hunting regs are in Colorado, and then reach out to the folks at the pellet shop and see what's good. But or it just if not them, just like talk to these air gun companies because like seriously, you'd be surprised. And they're like, yeah, I'll send you one.
Sweet. Yeah. You got me hooked. And I grew up in the airsoft paintball world, so I was always shooting that kind of stuff. So I definitely could see myself getting hooked on that.
Yeah.
So we're closing in on an hour here, Max. It's been a really fun talk. One question I've been leaving people with or trying to when I can remember, is just kind of like right now, who is inspiring you in your life?
Ooh, who is inspiring me in my life right now? Honestly, my training partners.
Okay.
Right, I'm around my buddies Adrian Fenty and Chris Johnson. Chris Johnson's getting ready. He's a former Stanford football player. Now does triathlons. Getting ready to open up a Chick-fil-A. And
Mhm.
since I'm over here grinding, trying to open up, be in a situation to open up a cafe, but they're just two dudes that are just crushing it in life in terms of being entrepreneurs and still being fit. And I know where they're at in life is where I want to be at in life. And I think it's also very important just to surround yourself with people that do inspire you, where you're like, I want to be like this guy. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think they're probably looking at me and being like, I want his fitness. And I'm like, I want your professionalism. And I think that feeds off of both off of each other, and with it just being a good environment. But yeah, I mean, I look up to those two right now for sure.
Oh yeah, that's a great answer. You got to surround yourself with good people. My mom used to say, if you hang around shit, you're gonna smell like shit. And that was her way of saying, in other words, you gotta surround yourself with people that you want to be like.
Exactly.
So I really appreciate you being on here.
Yeah.
Hopefully some of your drive will rub off on me. And yeah, next time I'm in California, I'm gonna hit you up and we'll have to go shoot the bows.
July through October, man, or let's go bear hunting. It'd be great to have
Okay.
someone with me when I go bear hunting, so I'm not like have someone to watch my back.
Yeah, I think I'll be able to do a West Coast trip. I'm teaching survival skills through September. So after September, I should be open. So I will hit
Perfect.
you up. We'll try and get something on the map.
Cool. Sounds good.
All right, Max. Well, I appreciate you being on here. Thank you everybody that joined, and stay wild. We'll see you guys next time.